We don't act as if we understand that we have a treasure beyond reckoning. That Buddha seed within us absolutely assures us that we can accomplish Dharma, that we can be liberated, that all beings can be liberated. We don't act as though we know that. We act as though we are blind, deaf, dumb. Buddhist terms, in Buddhist teachings, we are taught that it's like a bee in a jar. Just going round and round and round. You've seen how bees do. They don't have the sense to recognize what that glass is and how they should proceed. In the same way, we don't have the sense to recognize what it is that we are enclosed in. And so we remain selfish and self-absorbed. And that brings on ordinary karma with ordinary sufferings. It's always a mixed bag of tricks. There's a little happy in it and a lot of crap. And even in happiness, there's a great deal of suffering. Because you know when you've been in your most wonderfully satisfied moments, when all the things that you really hang your hat on have come together for you, when the great love of your life has shown up, and he's in a good mood, and you're having a great dinner, and your kids have all grown up and they're all doctors. And, you know, at those glorious moments when you can really think, oh, this is good, life is good, or you're at the beach. You know, you're at the beach and you're thinking, it's Margaritaville. This is good. Life, you know, I don't know why they say life is suffering. But even in those times we suffer, because if we allow ourselves not to be drunk with the silliness of samsara, we remember that that situation is impermanent. The margarita glass will be empty. The hangover is next. The beach, pretty soon you got to go home. You can't live there forever. Your son's a doctor, but he's going to die. The great love of your life showed up. Someday. Someday. The great love of your life shows up, and how many times has that happened for all of us? And turns out to be a complete and utter turkey. And so some of us, even though we get a little happiness from samsara, we've also come to understand that it's all impermanent, just like suffering. We have no idea how we lucked out and got happy right at this moment. We hope that it's because of our hard work. But unfortunately, we have no idea how to make some more happiness appear. And that's the problem with samsara. Yeah, it does have its happy moments, but it's laced with suffering. And so on the Mahayana path, we begin to swallow the antidote to this self-absorption that continually ripens our ordinary minds, ordinary views, our ups and downs, our regular samsaric addictions, again and again and again, living and dying just around the wheel of samsara. We begin to apply the antidote. The old habits weigh a little less, and the good habits become more frequent, more deep, more profound. And that's how it works. It's like scales. And once you have a good chunk of good habitual tendency, there is so much less influence on that. You tend not to draw the non-virtuous karma forward. You tend to draw the good opportunities and beneficial karma forward. And that includes moving closer to enlightenment. The gross obscurations of our karma begin to pacify. I say pacify in the way that if you think of an ocean with a hurricane storm, there's all sorts of energy there, and it's all about the hurricane. Never enough. You'll never be satisfied with yourself. And if you can't love in an unconditional way, there is a self-loathing that begins to grow within one's heart. And we get into the habit of thinking that love has to come from someone else, and if I don't get it, I'm going to be seriously pissed off. But that self-loathing actually comes from our inability to love unconditionally and to love as we love on the Mahayana path through recognition. Of the sameness of the nature that we are. So here we are in this big ocean, and it's just it's crazy. It's just nuts. And when we begin to remove the gross habitual tendencies and gross defilements by practicing as we do on the Mahayana path, it's like pacifying a storm. The ocean doesn't go away. The waves don't go away. Wind doesn't go away. Energy doesn't go away. But it sure looks a hell of a lot different when there's no hurricane. And so it's like that. It's pacified. The inflammation that stirred up the waters, that stirred up the wind, whatever energies came together to create this terrible storm, these are like the very energies that we create every day of confusion, delusion, neuroses, self-absorption, hatred, greed, and ignorance, jealousy, pride. These are the storms that we create through non-recognition. And so through taking the Bodhisattva vow and through practicing in the Mahayana way with the Mahayana view, we begin to pacify the storm. We begin to think that in the way that I would not consciously, at least, set myself up for suffering. I mean, I wouldn't put myself in a, oh gosh, what's a horrible example? A Republican National Convention. All right, I'm just joking. In the same way that we would not bring ourselves to the slaughterhouse. We would not do that to ourselves. In that same way, and with that same kind of regard, we would not cause harm to others. Because our understanding has become such, our recognition has become such, through the removal of gross habitual tendencies and gross defilements, that we realize that when we cause suffering in another, we cause suffering in ourselves as well. And you have to wonder how that all happens. I mean, if everything's empty and all. Well, the emptiness of phenomena and the emptiness of self-nature, this emptiness is not silent or dull or black or void or vacuum. Within this luminosity is the potential for every sound, every activity, it is ripe with potential. One can understand that the ground, which is the primordial wisdom nature, that which we call the Buddha nature, that pure luminosity, is the same as the path, which is the method by which we awaken to the ground. And so the path must be in its essence, in its nature, in its substance, of the same primordial wisdom, empty nature. The path then is the display of that very nature. And the result of the ground and the path is the fruit or the result. The fruit or the result is Buddhahood. Completion stage, awakening, where one awakens to the primordial wisdom nature and can view the emptiness of phenomena with wisdom and understanding that, frankly, I cannot explain to you. You'll understand a little bit of it while you're in the room here with me, because we do have the blessings of the primordial wisdom nature here. We have the supports that are necessary. We have the Lama, we have the Buddha, we have the Dharma, we have the Sangha. Right here. And so for a little while, you can smell it a little bit. Just taste it a little bit. The ground, the path, and the fruit arise from the same empty luminosity, free of contrivance, and therefore free of ignorance, free of delusion. That primordial wisdom display comes as our root teacher, and Guru Rinpoche himself, the very emanation of Lord Buddha, who is the Buddha for this time. Guru Rinpoche himself said, I will appear as your own root guru. And so what is meant by that? Well, what is meant by that is, again, here we are practicing on the Mahayana and then moving into the Vajrayana path as well, and Vajrayana and Mahayana are one, because the primary consideration is the great bodhicitta, the great awakening that is the uncontrived, indistinguishable compassion. This is the root of Mahayana and Vajrayana. And so when Guru Rinpoche said to us that I will be there as your root guru, what was he talking about? Here again, we have to use that subtle wisdom awareness and open up to view. Because was he saying that if you sit in the room with somebody you call your root teacher, then magically Guru Rinpoche in the sky is going to appear like a cartoon, sort of dance around a little? That maybe he's here. You see him, anybody? Oh, there's a statue. Maybe that's him. Do you think that's what Guru Rinpoche meant? I doubt it. I think he did better than that. Guru Rinpoche, in his incredible wisdom, foresaw this time, knew of our delusion, knew of the thickening of what is called Kali Yuga, or the age of degeneration, and gave us the practice of Guru Yoga. Guru Yoga is the practice of recognition of the Guru. And you think, well, what the heck good is it going to do me if I recognize my Guru? Okay, so you're my Guru, so I recognize you. Well, it's like this. Once again, there's this pure perception based on the awareness or awakening to that primordial wisdom nature. The ground, the path, and the result, or the fruit. The ground is primordial wisdom nature, clear, undefiled, unobstructed. That is the appearance. When the great Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, such as Guru Rinpoche, and the great lamas of our lineage appear on their throne to teach you, this is not somebody showing up, cool, come out of town, or come to talk to you. You shouldn't think in that ordinary way. Instead, you should come to recognize the sameness of the ground, the path, and the fruit, and think that in meeting with the Lama, in meeting with the Bodhisattva, we are in truth meeting with the Nirmanakaya form of the Buddha. Nirmanakaya means like form body of the Buddha. So the important part is not to think about the form body. You're not supposed to think about your teacher. Well, I like his or her personality. This is cool. I mean, you can think like that, but, big so what? Or I like the way my Lama wears his robes, or her robes, or whatever. Those kinds of ordinary thoughts and the way that we judge and think about ourselves and one another. Instead, we should think, this is the door to liberation. And with that kind of concentration, certainty, in the same way that if you were in a burning apartment building or burning house, and suddenly the door swings open, there's a door, and the whole house is on fire. Believe me, you will have Guru Yoga for that door. When you recognize the danger that you are in and the blessing that that door implies, freedom, liberation, freedom from suffering, you will go through that door without looking back. And so we should think of the Guru in that way. We should think that the Guru represents the door to liberation. We should think that the Buddha nature has arisen in this very form for the sake of sentient beings. And then as we practice Guru Yoga, we come to understand that something mystical happens. When you practice Guru Yoga, for instance, you understand the Guru as you could not understand before. Each one of you will have an individual experience with your Guru. Sometimes it will be really wonderful and joyous and dramatic and satisfying. And other times it will not. Maybe it'll be wrathful. Maybe you'll be totally bummed because you saw your Guru and they didn't look you in the eye or pay special attention or smile in a loving way or something like that. Or maybe you'll think, well, I don't know what happened. I used to really like my Guru, but now I don't like my Guru so much anymore. Or maybe you will think that the Guru should be this way or that way. And you'll have your own concepts about it. Well, once again, those concepts and that kind of thinking only increase one's own self-absorption. They strengthen the ego and bring about a more profound state of delusion ignorance, and non-recognition. It's not like the guru needs your devotion. That's not what it's all about, I promise. It's not that the guru finds this fun to sit in such an uncomfortable chair. It's none of those things, you see. It is the student forming the connection with the face of their own Buddhahood. Forming their connection with the very door of liberation. Whatever relationship the student has with the guru is their own. It is completely unique and different from anyone else you see that has a relationship with the guru. And you own it. It is yours. In the same way that you own your nature. You like to deny it. You like to act ordinary, but you can't get away from it. You are that. And in the same way, your relationship with your teacher is completely unique. When you feel that your teacher doesn't approve of you or doesn't like you, or whatever ordinary motivation you attribute to your teacher, that is a direct reflection of your own karma. It is a direct reflection. You can look at that and you can see for yourself how you have practiced in the past. And sometimes really amazing and glorious things will happen between oneself and one's teacher. And that too will tell you that in the past you have accumulated some extraordinary merit. Obviously you can't remember, but you can rejoice in it. And so the teacher becomes for us the door of liberation. And we begin to move into a state of recognition that we hold literally Buddha in the palm of our hands, enthroned within our hearts. We are that, only asleep now. Dreaming funny dreams like we do when we had a big meal before we went to sleep. Each of us in our own slightly particular bardo. Yes, we relate, it seems, to one another. And my friends, I can tell you that this is true. Two best friends, two peas in a pod, two people that are so close you think, boy, they're like twins. Two friends that share a relationship and are so close are in two separate bardos, two separate dreams, two separate worlds in a sense. And we think to ourselves, how is this possible? I can talk to you, I can reach you anytime I wish to, oh great friend. Well, it's possible because each one is reacting to and revolving within their own karmic puddle or karmic bubble. And they see through their own karmic perception. One person will say one thing, another person will say another thing. It happens that when they communicate, it sounds alike. But that's because of their belief that they are that close. And yet one day, that friendship is finished. How? What disruption happened? What amazing thing occurred? How could this be? And now you come to understand that it's because in truth, there were two separate pockets of karma here. and karma is irrefutable. The cause and effect of karma is irresistible, irrefutable. And until we achieve supreme enlightenment and begin to understand the empty nature of our karma, as well as our attachment to our karma and that person and that result and that need to have that friend in that way, under those conditions, until we see the emptiness of all of that, we will never understand. And so we should practice differently with our teacher. And this is where view comes in order to practice understanding emptiness and to accomplish the Dzogchen way, or the way of great accomplishment. We begin to practice in such a way with our teachers as to recognize the teacher as the Nirmanakaya form of the Buddha. We stop concentrating on the outward appearance and start relaxing the mind, freeing ourselves of the contrivances and conceptualizations that compromise judgment. And instead, what we do is we begin to, in our practice, create the mystical connection, the mystical recognition. In our tradition, and of course different traditions are different, in our tradition we start here with the 7-line prayer, which is the prayer to Guru Rinpoche. That prayer itself is a complete puja in a very, very, very abbreviated form. So it's an excellent way to start. And we meditate on having devotion for the teacher. We begin to practice in different ways. One of the ways that we practice, of course, is when we practice Guru Yoga, say in our ngundro, there are certain prayers that we say and even songs that we sing that say, Lama can know. Lama, only you know. Because the Lama is the very display of the Nirmanakaya. Because the Nirmanakaya has appeared in this world in such a way as even we, with a little training, can see. This is how we start. And so we begin to practice in such a way that we understand the difference between our own minds and the nature of the Lama. We practice in such a way that we say, oh, Lama can know. Only you know, Lama. And we visualize that we are hanging over the abyss of samsara, like a giant Grand Canyon. I mean, really a bottomless abyss. That if you were to fall down, like in the revolution around the cycle of death and rebirth, that if you were to fall down, you have no idea where you would land. You know, maybe you would land on a cliff that's nearby and be saved. But maybe you would land all the way at the bottom of the abyss. And there's all sorts of terrible variations on that theme. So we practice in such a way that we're hanging from a string. And that string is anchored in the very mind of the Guru. Now, once again, this is not a personality cult. You don't have to like the way your Guru dresses, or looks, or smells, or acts, or whatever. The ways that you like to think of each other with. You're training yourself away from that in order to move into a more profound state of the recognition of pure view. So you don't practice like that. You practice thinking, Lama can know. And you're practicing to recognize the appearance of the Nirmanakaya form of the Buddha here on earth. And when you see your Lama's activity, you practice to recognize that this is the activity display of the Buddhas. And when you see the Lama's qualities that enable the teaching of Dharma or compassion towards sentient beings, or even just the qualities that cause the Lama to return again and again for the sake of sentient beings, cause the Bodhisattva to return again and again for the sake of sentient beings, you begin to recognize this. These are the qualities. You are free. You're right, this is America. Whoop-de-doo. You are free to spend your time sitting in that chair, looking at me and saying, you know, she's got too much jewelry on. Or you could say, you know, I think her hair should flip in a different direction, or whatever, you know. Or maybe something. Whatever something is. And that's your practice. You're right, you're free in America to practice like that. You can have ordinary view. You are free to suffer. Emaho. But to practice in an alternative way, to practice more profoundly, to see as we see on the Vajrayana path, the Lama as the door to liberation, the Lama's method as the very display of the Buddha's activity here in the world, and the Lama's qualities as the very display of the very compassion of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. If we see like that, who benefits? Not the Lama. I mean, not really. The Lama comes here to benefit you. The Lama is not here to enjoy a popularity contest. The Lama is not here to have tons of fun. Not to say we won't have fun sometimes, but you know. The Lama is here for the benefit of sentient beings, and so you recognize. And we begin to awaken in a very simple way. We say, so it is possible for the very display and activity and quality of the Buddhas to be here on this earth. Whoa! What does that mean? And so in beginning to recognize that display, in beginning to recognize those qualities, those activities, and that intention, to see one's teacher as the Nirmanakaya form of the Buddha, begins to draw onto us the karma, the cause and effect relationship, the causes for the appearance of our own true nature here in the world. The appearance of our own true nature here in the world is not different from the appearance of the intentions and compassion and activity of the Buddhas here in the world. It's not different. And that's why the method is so useful to see in this way. Because if we practice pure view towards the three precious jewels, and that's the Lama, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, we draw onto us every precious opportunity. For instance, in order for us to be speaking this way, in order for us to have even this little taste of Dzogchen, even this little talk, little flavor, so much merit must have been accumulated in the past. You must have a lot of spiritual money in some bank that you're not even aware of. And that's the truth. You have to have accumulated some relationship, some awareness of your own nature, or some merit, many accumulation of prayers, some kind of extraordinary generosity in order to come to this place. And yet, we waste it. We waste our opportunities because we don't know any better. When we practice in such a way as to understand that we are literally hanging over the abyss of samsara, and the one way out of all that is samsaric is to recognize and to have the view and pure perception of that which arises naturally, spontaneously, and in an uncontrived way from the primordial wisdom nature that is the ground of all being. And when we learn to recognize that samsara is like a drunken narcotic dream, and that the way to awaken is to recognize the true face of the appearance of the Buddha nature in the three jewels here on the earth. And we practice like that studiously, in a determined way, at every opportunity. That whenever we do see our teacher, we think, even as I behold the door of liberation, may all beings pass through the door of liberation and end suffering. And even as you sit here and you hear some small words about Dharma, to think, even as I feast at the table of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, may all sentient beings come to this feast as well. And may they fill their bellies and their minds and their spirits with that food that never ceases to nourish. What we're doing is to train our mind. We're not practicing to be good boys and girls. So many of us, when we come to the path, we are approval junkies. And we want to know how to do this so we can do this right, so we can be good, so we can look good when we're doing it. But is there any good result from that? Well, fine. If it gets you to the teaching, whatever. But then once at the teaching, it's up to us to open the eyes of recognition. Well, it's not really these eyes, is it? To open the eyes of recognition. And as we begin to recognize the nature through recognizing our own teacher, our own root guru, we recognize the appearance and the activity, the qualities of the Buddha nature upon the earth. We begin to draw to us and to create the actual karmic connection by which our own face will be revealed. And so in Vajrayana, we begin to practice non-duality through Guru Yoga. We continue to practice offering our body, speech, and mind to the Guru. And we pray for such an auspicious connection that the awareness and enlightenment and nature that is the Guru becomes non-dual with our own nature, mixing like milk with water, completely inseparable. This is why it's recommended that we use the Guru Yoga practice in such a way that we actually are moved to tears. Like from the depths of our practice, when we are deeply in meditation and deeply in the effort of awakening and recognition. and we call out to the Guru with such faith and strong devotion that tears well up. And we begin to even awaken to that fearful knowledge that we're basically out of luck without a guide. That our habitual tendencies are so strong and so all-pervasive that we simply remain the same, revolving in samsara endlessly. Without that guide, without that way, without seeing that face, without beholding the face of the nature. That is our nature. The Lama's responsibility is to return for the sake of sentient beings, to give the Dharma out purely in an unbroken lineage from their teacher and his teacher before him, all the way up. In, out, whatever direction you want to put it in. This is the job of the teacher. The job of the teacher is to create the call, the vibration, to clear the way by which students who have that auspicious connection can come to the Dharma. The student's part of that responsibility is recognition. Once you have chosen the Guru and have met with the Guru, the student's job is to awaken fierce devotion. When I say fierce devotion, I don't mean fierce like ugly. But I mean the kind of fierce devotion you're going to feel for that door in the burning house. It doesn't have to be all gushy the way we normally feel things. It doesn't have to be all sentimental. It doesn't have to be anything like the normal human emotion that we perceive or that we have. And so many of us make the mistake of trying to substitute normal human emotion for devotion. That's what we're thinking. We're thinking, I have to make that emotion. I have to feel that feeling. And you know how feelings are, up and down and up and down and up and down, so inconsistent. So that we have a good feeling at one point and then we have a bad feeling at another point or a dumb feeling at another point, and we think that's our practice. And so in the same way as you relied on your guide as the appearance of the primordial wisdom nature in the world, you should rely on your own determination and whatever happy karmic propensity you have. You must have some, you're here, to practice. And so in relying on your determination, your job is to build that bridge. You can really think of the Lama or of your teacher, of your root guru, as being like the sun. No matter what you see in the world, light or dark, clouds or rainbows, storms or fair weather, the sun remains. It is constant. It is unchanging, as phenomena goes. We here on the earth either put ourselves in the shade or cover ourselves over or perceive rain and forget about the sun, forget that it's there, or perceive nighttime, and for us there might as well be no sun at that time. It is not in our minds. And so our relationship with the Guru is a little bit like that. The Guru remains constant. Our karma puts us in the different situations where the sun is perceived or not, light or dark. Our habits cause us to even protect ourselves from the sun. And we protect ourselves from the guru. I don't know how many times I walk into a room and people act weird. Almost any guru walks into a room and people act weird. If I'm invited to a party, I never go. You know why? Because when I am the best party killer there is. If I go to a party that a student is having, the minute I walk in the room, I have to sit in my special chair, and do that special thing. And everybody acts different because they hide. They cover themselves up around the guru. Like that works. And people think, I hope they don't see what's in my mind right now. I really hope they don't, I've been having thoughts at this party. And so, I hope, I really got to keep it together now. And that's kind of the ordinary view that we have. That's the way in which we practice. But our relationship with our teacher should be like having a direct relationship with the sun. I forget the UV rays and all that stuff. Let's try to think allegorically here. It's like having a direct relationship with the sun. You can move away. You're free to do that. You can hide. You're free to do that. You can take cover. There are so many different ways that you can control your relationship with the sun. But it turns out the sun is the very basis for your being. That we're made, interestingly enough, of the same stuff as stars. So I wonder if that isn't why it happens, that the earth turns and it becomes night and day, and there's shade and there's sun and there's rain and hoo-ah, whatever. Because it's an exact picture of how it is with us. But try to remember that all the changes in the relationship between the sun and oneself, they're all happening down here. In perception zone. The sun itself does not change. No matter what you do, you will always be cherished. Between you and your teacher is a stainless connection. That there is love, that there is compassion, that there is acceptance. There's no doubt. It is because the teacher knows the condition of sentient beings that they come to the earth. It is because the teacher understands the suffering of sentient beings that they come to the earth. It is because the teacher or the guru understands that the very nature of these beloved suffering ones is indistinguishable from the nature of all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. It is for this reason that the teacher comes to lift the veil from our eyes. There is no other reason. And so the practice then has more meaning. If we could only begin just a little bit by saying today, all that stuff that happens where your mood's up and down, and some days you feel good about your path and other days you don't feel so good about it. Some days you feel good about your teacher and then you don't feel so good about it. Some days you feel stuck and the other days you feel potent in your practice. and it's just all over the place. Well, this is just the phenomena of the shade and the cover and the different conditions that are here. These are the phenomena or obstacles that arise that bring about this feeling of separation from all that is precious and holy. And of course, that's when we take a big, long drink of samsara and practice our self-loathing. And we get all wrapped up in our heads and all wrapped up in our minds until we see the teacher again, and we do that practice and we remember, this is for me. This teacher has come for me. This teacher has come to pull the veil from my eyes. This teacher has come to show the way. I can cross the ocean of suffering because this teacher has provided the boat, which is Dharma, and is a captain that has sailed that ocean many times and is a proper guide. So this is the view. In the same way that we practice recognizing the uncompromising and consistent love and compassion and glorious, extraordinary, miraculous activity of all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, and specifically our own kind root guru, who is the condensed essence of all of that, we begin to recognize that connection, and we begin to recognize the compassion, the love, the reality. That I am here, and the very Buddhas and Bodhisattvas themselves have come to give me comfort. And that someday, through this practice and through my own sincere aspiration, I too will return in order to benefit sentient beings so that their suffering may be finished. Nanda.